Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Gr8 Talks Caps podcast, our first episode of the new year after a bit of a holiday break. And today we are going to be taking a look back at what was the best decade in Washington Capitals franchise history and one of the best decades all time of any team in NHL history for that matter. But first, we have some big news to talk about, and I'm sure you are all aware already. But Nicklas Backstrom, the Capitals franchise cornerstone centerman, the franchise leader in assists, the number 2 points leader in franchise history, behind only some guy named Alex Ovechkin. He's coming back, and he is coming back for a long time as he has signed a 5-year contract extension with the Caps, which will keep him in DC until at least his age 37 season. Now, we always knew that this was going to happen anyway, as the Caps organization, the owner Ted Leonsis, the general manager Brian McClellan, and Backstrom himself have all said all along that there's no way he's going anywhere, but still, it's a huge relief and weight off of our shoulders that it's now officially a done deal. Anytime that a franchise player is approaching UFA status, it's always a little bit anxiety filled, especially for us fans. You know, we're kind of in the dark a lot of the time as to what's going on. But the Caps pretty much for their part, like I said, as an organization, right from ownership down to management, even down to the coaching staff, Todd Reardon and his assistants there, and then Backstrom himself, they were all pretty transparent throughout the whole process, that he was always going to be coming back. But yeah, as fans, you know, it's always a little bit anxiety filled, even if you know in your heart and your head that he's going to be coming back. It's still nice to hear it for sure. So Backstrom, when interviewed about his extension, he also stated that there is, quote, no way that this will be his last NHL contract that he signs, stating that he wants to play past his age 37 season, which is when this new deal of his will expire, and also stating again that he absolutely wants to retire with the Washington Capitals being the only NHL team that he has ever played for. So it certainly sounds as if this new 5-year deal will not be the last 5 years that we see of Nicklas Backstrom in a Capitals jersey, but for now, I think that the 5-year term is a really great choice for both sides. On the Caps side, it's very smart. Locks Backstrom in for 5 more seasons past this current one, and for the duration of this 5-year deal, I would bet the house that he is still going to be a top player in this league, because the things that make Nicklas Backstrom so great, his hands, his vision, his creativity, his playmaking ability, his defensive awareness, his overall hockey IQ, not to mention his leadership qualities, which are second to none. These are all things that aren't and won't go anywhere. His game has never been based on speed or brute strength, and that's why I've always said that he'll be able to be a top player well into his late 30s. Because those things, you know, the speed, the brute strength, all of those things that do deteriorate with age, those just are not that important to Nicklas Backstrom's game and to what makes him a great player. So this is a great deal for the Caps. It's also a great deal for Nicklas Backstrom because it allows Backstrom to make back some of the pay cut that he's been taking for the last 10 years. I mean, seriously, how seriously underpaid has this guy been for the last 10 years now? It's insane. He's been on an extremely team-friendly deal for these last 10 seasons. So for him, maybe it's a little bit of an overpayment, but not by much because, like I said, he's still going to be a top player in this league, likely for the duration of this contract. But it's also what was owed to him for all that he's already done for this franchise. And I think Ted Leonsis absolutely knows that, and that's why he absolutely does not mind paying it. And the 5-year term, it really is great for both parties because, like I said, Backstrom makes some money back now while he's still a top player in the league. And then at the end of the 5 years, the Caps can extend him again on a 1, 2, or 3-year deal or deals at a much cheaper cap hit that's going to be fair for both sides. It's kind of similar to what the San Jose Sharks have done with Joe Thornton at the tail end of his career. He signs a 2-year or 1-year extension every year, and they keep bringing him back, obviously. More than likely he's going to retire as a San Jose Shark, but the point being that they bring him back on either a 2-year or 1-year deal at the end of his career and just kind of play it year by year. So I think that'll be the route that we see Backstrom and the Caps take with one another for the true twilight years of Backstrom's career, I guess you could say. He will retire a capital, and that way, everyone's happy. And for the Caps organization, something that they've been great at realizing is that it's a give and take when you're talking about extensions for star players, right? Like, the player gives you what you ask for, you have the respect to pay it back to them. Other players around the team see that and they want to be a part of it too. Other players around the league see that and they want to be a part of it too. The Caps have never had a problem luring free agents to town. And so the whole thing comes full circle with everyone wanting to stay and be a part of it. The winning, the all-around mutual respect, the family culture. And that's a big part of what makes this organization so great, is the mutual respect between ownership, particularly Ted Leonsis, who's been at the helm for all of it, and the core players of the franchise. It's been contagious and continues to be contagious for this franchise as a whole. And by the way, that's a big reason why the Caps are one of the only teams in the NHL that has proven themselves able to consistently re-sign their star players, is because, like I said, it's the organizational culture, it's the respect the players get from ownership, from management, it's the team culture, which, like I said, the players refer to as more of a family than a team. Players want to play here, they want to stay here, and the Caps have been better than any team in the league at making sure that they're able to keep their star players long term, and not having to overpay to do it, because it's an attractive place to play and to stay thanks to everything that they have going on here. And of course, the winning obviously does help with that too, but it's sort of a chicken and egg argument there. Winning helps you keep your star players, but keeping your star players is also what helps you to win. So the Caps have not had a problem with either or. Just take a quick look back at the players they've been able to re-sign and keep recently. TJ Oshie was set to become an unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2017. They never let him get there. They re-signed him, obviously, to an 8-year deal with a pretty team-friendly cap hit. And then they went on to win the Stanley Cup with him the very next season, with Oshie playing a huge part in it, scoring 8 goals, including 2 game-winning goals and 21 points in 24 playoff games. John Carlson had a massive postseason for the Caps during the Cup run in 2018, racking up a whopping 20 points as a defenseman in 24 playoff games, posting a +11 while leading the Caps in ice time as well. And he also, he led all NHL defensemen in points during that regular season as well, with 68 of them. So with that, combined with his postseason performance and the fact that he was set to become an unrestricted free agent that very summer, many thought that there was absolutely zero chance that the Caps would be able to keep him. But they did keep him, re-signing him to an 8-year, $64 million contract extension. And that $8 million a year cap hit is now looking to be an absolute bargain, as he put up another 70 points in the season following the signing. And obviously this season, which is his second with his new contract, he is on pace for 100 points and has already won this season's Norris Trophy, even if he doesn't play another game this season, according to most members of the media. Evgeny Kuznetsov as well, they were able to lock him up on an 8-year contract extension when most teams can't even convince their Russian players to stay past their entry-level contracts. Same with Dmitry Orlov, who turned down more money over in the KHL to sign a 6-year contract extension with the Caps. And now, obviously, Nicklas Backstrom. These all would have been extremely highly sought after free agents had they become available, and yet the Caps were able to lock all of them up thanks to a first-class organization from top to bottom, making it an easy choice for players to want to be here and, like I said, to stay here. So when you look at those names and their performances, it tells you pretty much everything you need to know. The Caps, as an organization, are unbelievably good at keeping their star players. Second to none in the NHL, and maybe even second to none in all of professional sports when you look around, what happens in some of the other major professional sports. Teams generally have kind of a hard time holding on to star players. So the Caps, one of the very few teams that have been excellent at it over the years. Backstrom's contract extension, by the way, also guarantees and I'm calling it right now, guarantees that Alex Ovechkin will also be re-signing on a similar length extension, and that he will, again, calling it right now, that he will break Wayne Gretzky's all-time NHL goals record. Alex Ovechkin is still playing at a level where he's on pace to score 50 goals yet again this season. He's still a beast who can score at will. His goals per game at this point in his career, the rate he's still scoring at, tells us that Gretzky's record is his to break if he wants to. And that's been the key, is if he wants to. How long does he want to play for? With this Backstrom extension, you can virtually guarantee that best buddy Alex Ovechkin is going to be sticking around for the same amount of time, for as long as Nicky is, for sure. And they're going to retire together at the same time, and having only played for the Washington Capitals, I would bet the house on that. They've made it known that that's their plan. The organization, ownership, general manager, etc., they've all made it known that that's what they want as well. So Ovi is going to play for as long as Backstrom does, and given that Backstrom just signed a 5-year extension, and given that he says that, that's not even going to be his last NHL contract, it's sounding as if we still have a lot of years left with these two. So when you look at it that way, that Backstrom and Ovechkin are obviously a package deal, then Backstrom's extension, which was already exciting enough, becomes doubly exciting for us Capitals fans. Backstrom also said that Ovi was the first person who he told about his new contract extension, and he said that that was partly because Ovi had been asking him literally every single day what's going on, how are the contract negotiations going, is a deal done yet, etc., which, let's be honest, is totally adorable. These guys just love being here, they love playing here, and Backstrom certainly lived up to his Saint Nick nickname here, negotiating his own contract extension without the help of an agent, which likely saved the Caps some money as well, thanks to a lack of agent fees. So that, combined with his unwavering loyalty to the team that drafted him, and it is Saint Nick indeed. Now, that's enough contract talk for one day, I think, but Backstrom re-signing is obviously a huge deal, so we had to talk about it for a bit. But now let's move on to the core part of the episode here, which is taking a look back at this most recent decade of Caps hockey. Now, as many of you know, we just recently celebrated Ovechkin's 10-year anniversary as captain of the Washington Capitals, just back on January 4th, actually. And so you must know then that it's no coincidence that the Caps have been the best team in the entire National Hockey League over the last decade, coinciding exactly with when Ovi was named captain in early 2010. Over this last decade, the Caps have posted the most wins, 465 of them to be exact, and the most points in the standings, 1,020 of those, of any team in the entire NHL. In fact, record-wise, it's the third best decade put together by any team in NHL history. Only the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins, both of the 1970s, back when the game was played a little bit differently, only those two teams, the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins of the 1970s, put together a better decade than this Caps team has. So the Caps in the decade were also the only team in the NHL to win the President's Trophy 3 times. They were the only team in the NHL to win at least 7 division titles over that span. That's despite, by the way, spending the last 6 seasons of the decade in the Metropolitan Division, which has routinely been the NHL's best and toughest division since its formation in 2013. The Caps, as of right now, have won 4 straight Metropolitan Division titles and are well on their way to winning a 5th straight this season. And obviously, the crowning achievement of the decade for the Caps was the Stanley Cup Championship in 2018. That goes without saying. Alex Ovechkin also led the entire NHL in goals over the course of the decade, scoring a whopping 437 of them, which is almost 100 more than the next closest guy, by the way. That's Steven Stamkos. So yeah, the goals race was not even close. Ovechkin also led the NHL over the decade in goals per game, even strength goals, power play goals, game-winning goals, overtime goals, etc., 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 etc. You get the picture. If there's a goals category to be led, Ovechkin led it. And the Gr8, Also added another 50 goals in the playoffs over the decade, which led all NHL players as well. So RIP to the infamous and ridiculous "but he doesn't perform in the playoffs" soundbite. That's just simply not true, has never been true. And Nicklas Backstrom also led the entire NHL in assists over the course of the decade, with a video game-esque 512 of them. Seriously, like, these may as well be video game numbers. The Caps' dynamic duo, Ovechkin and Backstrom, are only the second pair of teammates in NHL history. In over 100 years of NHL history, they're only the second pair of teammates to lead an entire decade in both goals and assists. So you could say it was a pretty decent decade for Capitals hockey. That's obvious. But what's not obvious looking back, and it's not obvious because there's so many to pick from, is what are the top 10 moments of this past decade in Capitals hockey. It could probably be debated a lot, and I'm sure my picks will probably be debated as well. But I'm going to give you my personal top 10. And now the rules I set for myself for this are that I can't simply choose all 10 from the Stanley Cup Championship run in 2018. That would be easy to do, but it's not allowed. I had to spread the love around a little bit. So here are my top 10. Number 10 is the Game 7 overtime winner by Joel Ward against the, at the time, defending Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins. God, that was a long time ago. None of the so-called experts in the media were giving the Caps any chance at all to win that series, and yet win it they did, knocking out the defending champs. Number 9, and I'm going to cheat a bit for this one and group a few different games together, but it's the 3 outdoor games, the 3 outdoor game victories that the Caps have had. They've only played 3 outdoor games, and they've had 3 victories. So the 2 Winter Classics on the road in Pittsburgh against the Penguins, and then at home in Washington against the Chicago Blackhawks, and then at home again in the Stadium Series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So 3 outdoor games for the Caps in the decade and 3 victories. They are the only NHL team, by the way, to be 3-0 in outdoor games. Number 8 is the Super Bowl Sunday comeback win over the rival Pittsburgh Penguins, which has since been affectionately nicknamed the Great Snowvetchkin game of 2010. You all know exactly which game I'm talking about. It was during a snowstorm. The Caps had won 13 straight games. That streak looked to be coming to an end as the hated Penguins went up 4-1 in the game. But then newly minted captain Alex Ovechkin decided that he didn't want the streak to be over yet, and so he scored a hat trick, and the Caps won the game in overtime for a franchise record 14th straight win. Epic. Number 7, and I'm going to go in a little bit different of a direction than most people's top 10 list here, but it's because I truly believe it was one of the defining moments of the franchise, and that's May 26th, 2014, when the Capitals hired Barry Trotz to be their new head coach, and on the same day they named Brian McClellan as their new general manager. McClellan and Trotz together formed the team and the culture that would eventually win the franchise's first ever Stanley Cup in 2018. McClellan, of course, is still general manager of the Capitals to this day. Thank goodness for that. He's amazing. And for number 6 on my list, sticking with that defining moments of the franchise theme, I'm going to go with July 2nd, 2015. That is the day that the Caps traded for TJ Oshie. We probably would not have a cup if we had not made that trade for TJ Oshie. Just try and change my mind about that. You will not succeed. Number 5 is Alex Ovechkin becomes the franchise's all-time leader in points. It was obviously inevitable that this was going to happen, but still it was awesome to see it become official. He's right where he belongs. Greatest Capital ever. And number 4 for me was Ovechkin scoring his 500th NHL goal. It was just a totally awesome moment, and the Caps did such a great job with it, the way that they celebrated it, and it was just really, really special, especially that his parents were in the building to see it, with his mom there with tears running down her cheeks and his dad there getting high fives from all the fans. It was just awesome all around. And then number 3 is Evgeny Kuznetsov's game-winning and series-winning overtime goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 6 of the second round in 2018. You could actually probably make the argument that this was the most important moment in franchise history. Kuzi exercised decades worth of playoff demons with a single flick of his wrist, and the rest was history. There was simply no stopping the Caps the rest of the way through the playoffs after that goal had been scored. I said right then, by the way, that they were going to win the Cup. And then number 2 is Braden Holtby and what has come to be known simply as the save in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final against Vegas. Already down 1-0 in the series, but up by a goal in the final minutes of Game 2. Holtby preserved the 1-goal lead with what can only be described as the most ridiculous save, especially given the moment and the circumstance of it. Just what a huge moment that was. It's probably the most ridiculous save you'll ever see. People around the NHL obviously agree. It's been named the greatest save of the decade, and everybody thought that thing was in the back of the net for sure. And who knows what might have happened if it did hit the back of the net. Maybe we're still cupless, maybe we don't have a Stanley Cup. So Holtby for president, that save was amazing. Finally, because of largely, like I said, because of that save, we get to number 1, which is Lars Eller's goal in Game 5 against Vegas, and the Stanley Cup winning chaos that ensued from the on-ice celebrations, the countdown, the hugging, the screaming, the crying, Ovechkin going to get his Conn Smythe trophy, and then the Stanley Cup, him passing it off to longtime line mate Nicklas Backstrom, the picturesque moment between TJ Oshie and his dad, the unending chants of "Let's go Caps" from Vegas's T-Mobile Arena, which was packed to the rafters, by the way, with Caps fans from all over the world, myself being one of them. All the way to the locker room celebrations and all of the epic shenanigans that followed, to the championship parade, the keg stands with the Stanley Cup, what came to be known as the Summer of Ovi, swimming in fountains, all the way to the banner raising ceremony on opening night. That's the best that we've ever had, the best moment not only of this past decade, but the best moment in franchise history, and it will always be the best moment in franchise history, because you know what they say, your first is always the most special, and so even when the Caps do win another Stanley Cup championship, it'll never compare to what we felt during the first. Honorable mentions for my top 10 list, by the way, are Ovechkin's 1,000th NHL point, which came, of course, against the rival Pittsburgh Penguins. Who else? And then Ovi becoming the all-time NHL goals leader among Russian-born players, and likewise Ovi becoming the all-time NHL points leader among Russian-born players. I know that all of those were really important to our great captain, and so that makes them really important to me as well. And the reactions from fans on all occasions were just completely awesome. Looking back, and certainly numbers-wise, record-wise, statistics-wise, it was certainly a decade of all Caps in the NHL. But what does the next decade hold for Capitals hockey? The Ovechkins, the Backstroms, the Oshies, they're inevitably going to get a little bit older, although so far all of them are seriously kicking Father Time's ass. But the Caps, they are in very good shape because they have that next generation in place, and the immediate next generation obviously being guys like Evgeny Kuznetsov, Jakub Vrana, Tom Wilson, Dmitry Orlov is in that age group as well. Even like a John Carlson, he's not that old either. It's just kind of easy to forget because he started so young in the NHL, and so he's already been around for so long, but he's kind of almost in that age group as well. Ilya Samsonov, obviously, and Braden Holtby's not that old either, but in the next decade he'll be going down the back half of his career. Ilya Samsonov, we're pretty freaking blessed to have a 22-year-old like Samsonov waiting in the wings for if we need him, and he's already putting up ridiculous numbers in the NHL this season, his first in the NHL, and it's pretty easy to see why he was so highly touted. He had long been considered the best goaltender not yet playing in the NHL. Now he's in the NHL and he's definitely making his mark. He's almost evenly splitting time with Holtby now, and Samsonov right now, he's won 13 of his first 15 starts. He's got a 2.11 goals against average. That's first in the entire NHL, by the way. And he's got a .925 save percentage, good for 7th in the NHL. He also did record his first NHL shutout the other night. He's had a bunch of games where he only gave up 1 goal, but he did get his first NHL shutout the other night, stopping all 23 shots against division rival, the Carolina Hurricanes, and getting his 8th straight win in the process. So Samsonov, he's already, like I said, making his mark. He was the first goalie in NHL history to win his first 8 career road games. So that's huge because, there's a lot of pressure when you play on the road. It makes it tough on a lot of young goalies. You see them struggle a little bit. Samsonov clearly not phased at all. He won his first 8 career road games. Again, he's the first goalie in NHL history to do that. So basically what I'm saying, folks, is that while the Caps have the NHL's best team right now, they also have some of the NHL's best young players, both on the Capitals NHL team currently. They're going to be around for a long time. And then those guys who are not even in the NHL yet. They have so many amazing players, both in the AHL and in the juniors. At the AHL level, the Capitals affiliate team, the Hershey Bears, is developing a few guys right now who will be big keys for the Caps' future. The most prominent being a couple of D-men who are both projected to be top 4 defensemen at the NHL level, and that's Alex Alexeyev and Martin Feravari. If you haven't seen these guys play yet, you should, and you should be really, really excited. These are very, very good players. And then obviously at the junior level, guys like Connor McMichael, who just lit up the World Juniors for Team Canada and won a gold medal with them over the holiday break here. He was the OHL's leading scorer when he left to join Team Canada. He's got 30 goals in just 30 games for the London Knights in the OHL this season. He's averaging over 2 points per game. And then obviously guys like Alexei Protas as well. He's been leading the WHL in scoring for much of the season. So, if you guys haven't seen these guys yet, like you should get excited because these are really, really, really good players. And, you have 3 leagues in the CHL, right? You have the OHL, the WHL, and the QMJHL. And the Caps have the leading scorer for 2 of the 3 leagues in their prospect pipeline currently. So that's just insane. Insanely good drafting by the Caps scouting department as per usual. And the Caps have always been great at the draft table, especially in recent years. Going back probably 15, 16 years now, I would say, all the way back to when they selected Alex Ovechkin number 1 overall. That's really when it all started, this insane run of drafting success. And that's really the blueprint for success in the NHL when you look around the league. And that's what the Caps have been able to do. That's how they've been able to remain the best team in the league for just over a decade running now, is they draft extremely well. They develop those players extremely well. And then they're able, through having a great organizational and team culture where players want to play and be a part of it long term, through that, they're able to sign those players to long-term contracts and keep them for the long haul at team-friendly cap hits. So that's really the key. And you look around the league, the teams that have had success, that's the way that they've done it, through drafting and developing their own hometown guys. And that's hometown guys, obviously not as in they were like born in Washington, D.C., but just, they drafted them, they developed them. The players kind of grow up within the organization, whether it's, playing for Hershey first or whatnot, and then they get called up eventually to the big club. But they've been really, really good at drafting players and then developing them and then keeping them. And that's turned into a lot of success, obviously. They also have, don't want to forget him as well, they also have Brett Leeson, who they got as what TSN called the biggest steal of the entire draft. That was at the most recent draft here in Vancouver last June. They also have a guy like Martin Haas, who just had a very, very strong tournament for the host team in the Czech Republic at the World Juniors. People up here in Canada, we watch a a lot of the World Juniors, so I was keeping a close eye on the Caps prospects. Martin Haas is another one who looked really, really good. So they have all of these guys, these young players who aren't even in the NHL yet, and so it would appear that even as these generational franchise cornerstone players like Alex Ovechkin and Nicklas Backstrom inevitably start to age somewhere down the line here eventually, it appears that the Caps are still very, very well set up for the future, and that future is going to be very, very bright. So my point is, Caps fans, it's been an amazing decade that we just had, the 2010s, and it will be nearly impossible for any team, the Caps or anyone else, to top. But, looking ahead to the 2020s, we should be very excited because both the present and the future for this team are filled with unlimited potential. And if I had to guess, we're going to have many, many, many more great moments in the next decade as well. Probably, hopefully, at the top of the list will be Alex Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time NHL goals record. And if we're really blessed, another Stanley Cup as well. But one step at a time. We've got a game against New Jersey tonight and a game against the New York Islanders on Saturday. And that is the last one that the Caps will play before the All-Star break. So let's keep it rolling, boys. And until next time, Caps fans, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere and everywhere else as well that you get your podcast from. So don't forget to do that, again, if you haven't already. And thank you so much, you guys. And as always, let's go Caps!